Could you guys kind of outline what are the differences between lease here, pay here versus buy here, pay here?
Sure. Yeah, maybe I'll take that one first, and then I'll hand it over to you, Eric, as we go through.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, of course, probably most folks are familiar with the buy here, pay here model. That's the traditional model, right? Using the retail installment sales contract. Whereas with LHPH, you're going to use a lease contract. It'll be a state-specific lease contract. And one of the challenges that oftentimes happens with buy here, pay here, because you have to use that retail installment sales contract, you need a high interest rate, right? Because you need to be able to cover your loss rate with your interest rate. So therefore, you're going to have a high interest rate on those. And you always want to try to keep that term as short as possible because you're trying to help that consumer. And the shorter that term is for a subprime consumer, the more likely they are to succeed. And that's the end goal, right? If they succeed, then they make all their payments to you and you have a successful relationship. That becomes challenging, particularly in today's world, because cars cost significantly more and interest rates are significantly higher. So that combination on a short term with the retail installment sales contract oftentimes makes for a very challenging payment and can oftentimes be not exactly the vehicle that you would ideally want to put that customer into. So that has caused some dealers to then look for different types of inventory that may not be what they typically hold. And anyhow, the challenges compound from there. On the lease program, because of the structure of a lease, because you have that residual, it gives you significantly more flexibility on how you structure that payment. The customer, if they can afford that payment, that's wonderful. You can go ahead and set that lease up such that it's nice and short on the term, and they can build equity through the entire thing. If they have a little bit more challenge with that payment, you have that additional lever in a lease structure to be able to give them the payment that they can truly afford and make them successful. It also means for a franchise dealer that they typically don't need to look for any different type of inventory. They can utilize the inventory that they already carry because they can make that payment affordable without sacrificing any profitability. Another difference between the two programs is interest rates. So in a traditional retail installment sales contract, you have an interest rate. And in many states across the nation, they have interest rate caps, also known as usury rates, that you can't go above. So if you're in a state such as Arkansas, as an example, and you can't go above 19%, that dramatically limits both the profitability of your program and whether or not you even decide to get into that particular business, because it may not be sufficient to cover and make your portfolio profitable effectively. With a lease actually has a money factor. It does not have a interest rate officially by Reg M. There is no interest rate in a lease, and therefore usury rates are not applicable. It does not mean that we encourage folks to dramatically go high on their interest rate, but you can absolutely interest rate implicit in the lease, I should say, their money factor. But it does mean that you can set it at a point where you can make a profitable portfolio, no matter what state you're in. So that's another benefit for the leasing structure. Next up, as I'm sure everyone's familiar with on this call, Reg Z versus Reg M. Reg Z is what regulates retail installment sales contracts. It is, if you've ever taken the time to read through that, it's about 317 pages long and can be a little onerous on the regulatory side. Whereas leases are underneath Regulation M, the Consumer Leasing Act, and it's roughly 37 pages long, and about 19 of those pages are focused on how you can actually market a lease compliantly. So that you can tell just right there, leases come with a significantly lower regulatory burden based on that. I got back on the slide there. There we go. Eric, did you want to touch on the state?
I'll just add two quick things from a collection standpoint is in a retail installment contract, the driver of the vehicle is listed as the owner, and the dealer, if they're the lender, they're listed as the lender. So in a lease, the dealer is basically the owner of the vehicle, and the person driving it is the leasee. So when it comes to certain things, if you have to recover your collateral, such as a repossession, it's much easier when you're the owner of the vehicle, such as in cases such as bankruptcy. These can't be included in a bankruptcy, maybe on reservations. There's certain times when it's much easier to get your vehicle if you need to do that.
Wow. So overall, what I'm hearing you guys say, there's a lot of really good benefits to lease your pay here because the flexibility of the type of vehicle you can sell, the flexibility of the rates, the money factor as opposed to the rates. And also on top of that, it sounds like you have more control over the entire process in lending. So there a lot of great, appreciate you guys kind of differentiating lease your payer from buy your payer on that.